Hey everybody, it's Marty the JavaScript Party and my buddy Rhett, and I'm gonna do a use it or lose it video. Hopefully it'll be pretty quick. And really the biggest reason I'm doing this is because when I look at my analytics, the vast majority of people, I wouldn't say the vast majority, but a strong majority, probably like 70, 80% of the people that watch my videos are not in the US. They're in other parts of the world, and India being the largest minority. So, but according to the analytics, about 15 to 20% of the people that come to watch my videos are in India. And it wouldn't surprise me if most of the people in the US that watch my videos are from India as well. So, um, now I really enjoy TikTok, and one of the I've been watching these guys lately, and they're from Britain, and they are just like on a honeymoon with the United States. Like I think they're here for like a 6 month vacation, and they're just traveling all around the U.S. and they're just like it's fun to watch them because it's sort of like they point out a lot of things that you that you that we kind of take for granted, but we should appreciate, and um, and so that is sort of the reality that watching them get all excited about some barbecue or um, hanging out at some camping area or something like that, or like free flowing water that we have everywhere, and stuff like the sunny days, all the stuff that comes with being an American and being around other Americans and all that. Because people are generally very, very friendly, um, and all that is nice. And then the fact that we can move from state to state without a passport, and that all of our states are unique in their own way, and they all have like sort of their own cultures and stuff like that. So it's really cool, but I think what they there's something that us Americans that were born here and were raised here that we're sort of innately aware of, but we haven't put into words, is that freedom ain't free. That's the first way I ever heard that was when I was a kid. They would say freedom ain't free, and the thing is yeah, the price of freedom is other people's freedom, and sometimes other people use their freedom in a way that is not beneficial to, sometimes just straight up jerkiness. But the thing is it made me think about, like, because a lot of people sort of attribute it to our government. Like they say, oh, um, the reason the United States is such a pleasant place to be, and it is a very pleasant place to be. The reason it's such a pleasant place to be is because the government manages things really well. And I will say that it is true that it is because of the way we are governed that is one of the big reasons, not the only reason, but one of the big reasons why the United States is very pleasant. But it is not because of how of it's not because of their governing skills. It's because we have a foundation of freedom here, in the U.S. So like you are pretty much free to do whatever you want, um, but like there's all sorts of conditions around it. Um, but so one thing that I was thinking about with the governing is that, so we are, some people say United States is a democracy. We are absolutely not a democracy. If you really want to, like, a really good example of understanding that is, like, every year I live in Georgia, which is one of the very first states of the United States. We were one of the original 13 colonies here in Georgia. I love living in Georgia, and I think that the Georgia legal system and way of governing is probably the closest to the original founders of the America's way of being. So we were one of the original states, and a lot of the people that wrote our constitution and designed our government here in this specific state, um, also were heavily involved in the United States. And the United States has changed a lot the way that works. But Georgia's probably the closest to the original um, template. And we are so to understand like our way of governing is every year there's a bill that goes through the Georgia legislature that and the thing the bill tries to do is it tries to legalize gambling and specifically casinos in Georgia. So we have lotteries, but we don't have like horse racing. We don't have any casinos, slot machines, anything like that. And some people would like to get some casinos in Atlanta specifically. They think that that would be really, really cool. Um, so every year a bill goes through not to legalize gambling because they can't because we have a constitution that forbids it. I believe that's the situation. They want to get it to where we can vote on it. So they actually want to put it to a democracy to let all the citizens, all the legal voting citizens of Georgia vote on whether gambling should be legal or whether casinos should be legal in Georgia or not. Um, so, if we were a democracy, we wouldn't have to make a law or we wouldn't have to, pass a law that makes it okay for us to vote on it. So, so we're not a democracy and we are, some people say we're a representative democracy, but I think we are a constitutional federal republic. And that means that we vote for people and they go and they try to craft laws and try to do things with the government, with the way government spending happens and things like that. And the reason we vote for them is so that they will represent our best interests. So that's the democracy part. So you could have a constitutional republic where, you know, everybody votes on somebody, but then we say, hey, you go do you go figure out what to do. But in general, the spirit of our voting is that you should go and represent the people who voted for you, and you should do what they would want you to do, unless they're absolutely wrong. Like maybe all the people want to do something, but it's the worst decision, and so then they have to kind of do their job. So, there's that, and then and that's important to understand when you come to the United States, is that we are not a democracy. We don't all really get a say in the government. We just get to vote on people that get a say in the government, and our and it works pretty well. Now, the point I'm trying to get to though is that not only are we sort of a constitutional republic, sort of biased in the direction of democracy, we are also heavily biased in the direction of freedom. Like our basic foundational idea is that if you take a group of people and you just let them do their thing, you'll get the best response. Not always, but that's the general feeling. And so these guys are going around and they're just like, man, this is amazing. And what they're doing is they're experiencing the fruits of generations upon generations of freedom and people making good decisions because they're free to make good decisions. And the government isn't trying to make all the decisions for us. But the thing that most Americans understand, that most people who come here don't understand, is that while freedom is a very productive and positive thing, there are definitely situations, conditions, and individuals that that sort of don't, that it isn't great when they have freedom. It's not, there's certain individuals that are gonna just do mean things. They're just mean. They're just mean people. And then there's people that are in conditions, in situations in which they're gonna do things that are not good, not positive, not enjoyable. But that is rare. It's probably literally like 1 in 10,000, but it happens. And so they were very upset because they parked their car in a Burger King and walked across the street to a gym and worked out at the gym. And then when they came, their car was gone and it got towed. And then they're like, what in the world, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, no, I mean, you probably had some manager for whatever reason. Maybe he's mean. Maybe he or she is in a bad situation, or who knows. and somebody with a tow truck, and they got together and decided that they were going to start towing people's cars if they parked in their parking lot, and you know, we're free. We have freedom, and unfortunately, that's sort of the downside to freedom. So if you're coming in the United States, it's going to be great. If you come here, you probably are going to have a very, very, very pleasant time. If you visit, if you it is a little dicier in the big cities, but if you get, and you usually, honestly, when you say it's dicey in the big cities, you're literally talking about 20, 30, 40 blocks of space, and pretty much every place else you can't go wrong. In the big cities, you could have a lot of fun in those 40 blocks, but you better know what you're doing. It can be dicey. Um, it can be weird in some of the small towns too. Some of the small towns are almost like little independent countries of their own, and they have their own judges and legal people or police and all that, and they're not necessarily very educated or don't care about the actual laws of the country. So, they may do some weird stuff, but like literally, if you come here, like if 10,000 people come here, I honestly believe that 9,999 of them are going to have a good time. And if you come here to work, you're probably, honestly, the biggest thing you're going to be concerned about is not getting to stay to work. I mean, it is really nice for the most part. Um, they're pretty good to you at most jobs. Um, the I will say that the higher the percentage of Americans that do whatever it is you're doing, the better the job. That's just sort of, there's no rule of that, but just, you can push people around. People, bosses can push employees around. So if you come over here and you're doing something that's almost completely dominated by foreign workers, you're probably going to not it's not going to be great. I say the biggest industry where that is the case in the U.S. is agriculture. When I was a kid, I used to work at a farm. When I was like 10 years old, at a farm, and we used to get like $10 for 4 hours. We got paid by the pound of crops that we picked, but and most of the people that we worked with were not legal in the United States. And so, we didn't get minimum wage. If it was 115 degrees out, you had to just work. You just had to suck it up. There was no real protections or anything like that. So, I would say computer programming or IT in general, like working in an IT shop, is probably about 50-50. Probably about half the people here, at least, designers and business BAs and people like that are probably, if you add them all together, we're probably about 50-50 and 50%. So it's not as good as like if you were an attorney, for example. Like my son's an attorney, they get everywhere he's worked. He's been just treated like gold. Um, but it's just sort of like what people will put up with, and that's what the deal is. So like, yeah, if that is something you got to understand. And the other thing you really need to understand is we do not have one set of laws. So like, if you if you're in California and you could go to a dispensary and buy marijuana, and then you could get in your car and you could drive, and you would never pass a checkpoint or anything like that, and then you could get pulled over by a cop and a police officer, and you could go to prison for something that you totally bought legally in California, because like in Idaho it's totally illegal, but it's legal in California. So that's something that a lot of foreign people, when they come to the United States, don't really understand. Yeah, and we all learned that just through hearing stories and stuff like that. But it even gets Americans, because I believe marijuana is legal in. Well, okay, so here's an interesting one, right? Like, so in Atlanta, marijuana is decriminalized. So I believe it's a $25 fee, like a ticket, um, like a parking ticket almost, if you get caught with marijuana. But in Fulton County, which is the county that Atlanta is in, uh, marijuana is illegal, and you can go to jail for it. And then in Georgia State, the state which um, the United States, or where which Atlanta's in, it's absolutely illegal, and you can go to jail. You could actually do hard time for marijuana. And then in the United States, as a federal, it's illegal. And what that means in reality is you could literally be walking around smoking a joint, right? Smoking marijuana. And then a Atlanta police officer could be like, hey, you aren't allowed to smoke that. And let's say the Atlanta police officer, you really tick him off. He can call one of his friends, like from like a Fulton County sheriff, and then you'll go to jail for that same thing. So he could just hold you there, and then when the sheriff shows up, you'll go to jail. Or he could call his state trooper friend, and and then you'll go to even harsher. And then if he happens to have a friend that's like in the federal, an FBI, a federal law enforcement person, you could get in even more trouble. And that's in the same spot. So you're in the same physical location, but you're under a different set of laws depending on which authority figure gets you. That is something that I think almost everybody understands here. That like it's not just where you're standing, it's what authority you're interacting with. And we all understand that, and it's so basic to us that we don't realize that that's something you need to explain to other people, where the law is the law is the law. And it doesn't matter which authority figure you're dealing with, there's a certain set of standards and laws. Now, that is not that way here. So I think if you want to come to the U.S., you'll probably have a very positive time. You will be blown away by the size and the scope and the friendliness and the diversity of the people. You could see all kinds of different looking people. In the same way, there are places where you can walk for all day long. You can walk for hours and hours and hours, going into one shop after another and never hear a word of English, and just hear Chinese or Spanish or Portuguese. We have areas that are just like where you would think you were in a whole different hemisphere of the world. And then you have just insane diversity of people, of plants, of animals, of all kinds of stuff. It's absolutely beautiful here. The weather is really nice for the most part, and people are generally nice, but there are some pitfalls. Anyways, yeah, so that's it. We are a constitutional federal republic with heavy leanings into democracy and really a foundation of freedom. Um, yeah, we went to Australia, and they are probably way closer to democracy than the United States, and they are. I think that was probably the most oppressive government I've ever been involved with. Like, it was insane how much power the government in Australia has over individual people. Like, things that we just absolutely take for granted. Like, we were told, who knows, because they tell a lot of things that aren't true. Like, like they'll have these signs that show koalas attacking people, but apparently koalas never attack people. They just put that there for the tourists so that the tourists don't like sort of befriend all the like start feeding all the koalas and sort of de wildlifing them, making them more domesticating them. They don't want to domesticate all the koalas, so they put up these signs that show koalas attacking people, but the koalas don't. Apparently, I don't know. I'm not sure about that, but so I don't know if this is true, but like the guy that was driving our bus said he was on the governing committee for fire. So they have governing committee for fire, and he was just like, you cannot make a fire outside unless you go to him directly and get a license in whatever his scope of authority is there. Like we don't have anything like that. We have certain days that they say you can't have a fire because the conditions are too dangerous. But for the most part, you're allowed to have a fire outside whenever you want. There's no one to call. And it is assumed that you're like, let's say you happen to be in a place where they are strict with fires. You have to get you have to get permissions. Like we have some cities like that. The first time the police come out, they will almost always give you a warning because it's pretty much assumed that you can have a fire here. Freedom is generally assumed, and when you find out that you aren't free to do what you want to do, generally it's assumed that you would assume that you were free. That's the thing, like unless there's been specific things. Anyways, I hope everyone gets a chance to come to the United States. It is absolutely beautiful here. And if you're a computer programmer, I definitely love having you guys here. I mean, you guys just bring so much value to the United States. We're very lucky to have you, no matter what people think. We definitely are huge beneficiaries of getting incredible computer programmers from around the world. And every computer programmer I've ever known that was here really had a good time here. They really enjoyed being here. They want to stay as long as they can, and usually that's the thing. And generally, if they do go back home, they do better at home after having spent time here. So it's probably in your best interest to come to the United States. Probably should try to avoid any of the major metro areas, like not metro, but the major inner city areas. But if you be fine, you'll be fine. Just be careful. You know, um, just be careful. But if you go out to like a suburb, you don't have to be careful. Not really. There's a lot of room. So, anyways, yeah. I hope everyone has a great day. Bye.